What's up, you beautiful people? This is Gary Horton. This is the NWA, the podcast celebrating the past, present, future, history, legacy, and tradition of the greatest pro wrestling entity of all time. Talking about that National Wrestling Alliance. And this is the NWA Weekly, where we talk about everything going on with the talent, the brand, and the people that love the brand. I don't know. That almost sounded like a legitimate intro to a show, that last part, but I just tacked that on just now. Anyway, I'm not alone. I am joined by that guy. That's Will Martin. Hello. Hey, it's Will Daly.
Hello.
And also we're joined by the Doc, Rob Stinson.
Good evening, good afternoon, my friends.
Which is it, Rob?
I don't know. Whenever you watch this, good morning.
Rob, you either just look like you freaked out on camera for the first time ever for some reason, or we just found out you're stoned, and I don't know which one it is.
I just in a minute, in a like a eureka moment, I was like, man, people are going to be listening to this at all hours. So I said good evening. It's like, wait a second, hold on. I always listen to it in the morning. So there you go.
We're working out. We get it.
So it was a freak out. He just he short-circuited his brain like right then.
Good time, everyone. Oh.
Good time.
That's happened to me too, so I have no room to talk. Anyway, I've been fidgety with my hat today because I always wear it down like this, but I've seen flat build, right? But I can't stand that, so I still curve the bill. But then also, nobody cares, but I'm in it now, so I'm talking about it. I watched the Inside the NWA episode from this week, and I noticed Eddie Kingston, who it don't get any cooler than Eddie Kingston, but that man constantly is like readjusting his hat, and then he wears it just like this. So then, I'm like, maybe that's how I should wear my hat. Like, maybe I should. How do I get to be as cool as Eddie Kingston? Speaking of which, they were on Inside the NWA, Eddie Kingston and Homicide, and they were with Joe Galley, and that's what you got on, what was that, Thursday? No, Friday? Thursday? Wednesday? Yes, Wednesday. There you go. I am prepared. Wednesday on the show, Eddie Kingston and Homicide joined Joe Galley, and they talked about all kinds of stuff. It was a fascinating interview. So I throw to you guys with the questions. A, what did you like about that? What did you take away from it? And B, can I ever look as cool as Eddie Kingston?
Let me tackle that last one. No. No, I'm kidding. You're cool in your own way, Gary. You don't need to be Eddie Kingston. You got your own thing going on.
That, I'm going to be honest with you, that sounds like some crap my mom would say when I was growing up. You're not fat, you're husky. You're big boned. It's fine.
So I loved this for several reasons. Number one, whether it was them, in kayfabe or not, I just love that no matter what, either they're real or they're real, like, because they were just like, hey, we're not fake. This is us. Like, we do this. The story about Homicide getting shot in the leg and then taping it up and wrestling a match. Like, that was hardcore, man. That was just like, that's what you want in a wrestler. Like, they know who they are, and they're like, we're these outlaws, literally. And we don't care. We go in there to fight. I love them putting over the title more, like everyone in the NWA does, coming in there saying, hey, the goal is Nick Aldis in the world title. I mean, he's the best wrestler in the world because he's got that belt. So that's my goal. And then when he asked him, when Galley asked Kingston if he's, can you beat him in a wrestling match? He's like, yeah. Who's gonna say no? What man is gonna say no? Yeah, I can beat him. It's just like stuff like that. It was just even more of that. We've talked about a lot before on the show, but like just that realness of like, well, yeah, obviously. Nobody's going to be like, well, I might can beat him, So I really appreciated that. For me, it just like, I don't know. I'm ready to see them back in the ring again after hearing that interview. So
it was fun to see like the part of him that had this like, yeah, I like to fight, obviously, my reputation, but then he threw in there, like when you were talking about the Nick Aldis thing, the yeah, this is about fighting. That's what we come to do. We fight it, but we fight people who deserve it. So that's why Nick Aldis, like, that's the point. Like, I got to fight him. You know, he's the man who's supposedly, like, you know, is treated like he's the alpha dog, right? So I got to beat him up. So that was cool to see them put over Nick like that. Also, some props to Harley in the middle of that too, talking about how tough he was.
From Joe Galley, actually, he was the one that brought him up.
Yeah, true. Rob, what'd you think?
Point two, tackle point two, and then we'll go to A for point two. Yes, Gary, you do look as cool as Homicide and Eddie Kingston. So
I was gonna say I wasn't going for Homicide. I don't know. Like,
Gary, you're as cool as Joe Galley.
You want to be on the? Yeah, you're definitely cooler than Joe Galley. I'll give you that. So, no,
I'm not knocking Homicide, by the way. Can I just throw that in there? That was not a.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Too late, man.
My thing was, it's like there's a difference. Like Eddie Kingston seems like cool as hell, but like Homicide just looks like you just.
He'll kill you.
Nobody wants to come near him. Yeah.
Yeah, Homicide will cut you. I have a lot. I've been following these guys for a long, long time, even before the Billy Corgan era in NWA. Eddie Kingston, actually, I was there like the early year or two that Eddie Kingston was just getting started out. He was involved in Chikara Pro up in Allentown, Pennsylvania with Mike Quackenbush's promotion. And he was a member of a tag team, ironically, called the Wild Cards with a guy named Marciano. I can't remember his first name. But we loved him. I have pictures of my son and him going, and we made our own little Wild Card shirts and all that. He was, even back then, like when we spoke the other week about when Eddie Kingston spoke, there's just this anguish in his voice. Like it's a tortured voice, and it's so compelling. And even in this hour-long interview, it's like everything he said, like talking about, like you guys mentioned, can you beat Aldis? And he says, yes, he can beat him. Even then, there's just a like he believes that. He really does believe that, you know. And then Homicide, we would follow Homicide in 3PW, which was Jasmine St. Clair's little promotion. It was more of a East Coast hardcore stuff. I was kind of digesting that back then. I'm not really so much into that now. But one of the things that strikes me about Kingston and Homicide is how like coherent they are together. And I would like to have seen more discussion about and they did talk about this, but I would like to have seen more discussion about them in the tag team title scene and like scaling out teams like the Wild Cards or teams like Eli Drake and James Storm, because I think that Homicide and Eddie Kingston are one of those rare breeds where this is like you don't put two megastars together and form a team. They are a team. They are really real brothers who really understand and can interpret each other. And they're going to gel like they have in the past. They're going to gel in the ring so well. And once Homicide gets healthy, they're going to be a real tremendous force to be reckoned with in the tag team scene. And the other thing I wanted to put over, and this was just Joe Galley, man. You don't get better at interviewing than Joe Galley does. And he's out there on the streets now doing stuff, you know, for the public. But gosh, what a great this guy's like, this is not some canned, you know, just softball. He's asking riveting questions all throughout. And I could listen to Eddie Kingston and Homicide for 5-6 hours. They're amazing.
Yeah, and props to them, too, for you kind of hit on this, but keeping that story going, too, you know, just as soon as Homicide gets better, like the plans they have. And, like, they talked a lot about Aldis, but they did bring up the Pope and, you know, just Kingston's issues with him, and it's about taking him out first because he's a weasel and he's going to get involved in things until you do. But, like, you know, they're like, well, but do you want to match with him? And he's like, he's not going to step in the ring. Pope ain't going to get in the ring, you know? Like, it was kind of cool. Just seeing them at least acknowledge the storylines that have been left dangling because of everything going on right now. So I did enjoy that. Anything else on Inside the NWA before we move on from here, fellas?
I just want to say, like when I listen to the Pope thing, and I like the Pope, I really do. I mean, I think he brings a lot of color to the show. But for me, like the Pope thing has kind of always been somewhat of a distraction. I understood why Homicide was hurt, that you had to kind of find a way to keep Eddie Kingston in the picture and all that. But to me, it's like when I think about tag teams, that are believable to me. I mean, I certainly think that Eli Drake and James Storm gel very well, better than I expected, because they're two singles megastars, and I don't normally like putting two stars together like a Sting and a Luger, that kind of thing. But the only other team out there that I really feel and believe like I do with Homicide and Kingston are the them boys, the Briscoe brothers. And I feel like seeing Eli Drake and James Storm go against Homicide and Kingston would be like having the Briscoes in there. They're like our Briscoes. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that makes sense or not, but they're like our version of the Briscoes, just the authenticity and the realness.
No, when you said it, it like clicked to my brain. I was like, that makes a lot of sense. In fact, I was like, can you imagine Homicide and Kingston versus the Briscoes? Because that feels like that would be a rough match. Like that would just be like in a way that like you don't want to be in the first few rows. Like that's they look like they would like just rough each other up big time. But anyway, Will, anything else you'd like to add?
I mean, I just loved the little pieces of goodness sprinkled throughout. I mean, highlights for me was when Kingston said, you can have your plans, but the plan changes when you get punched in the mouth. And it just gave that real fighter feel, where it's like, he was just like, yeah, I went into my first fight and I had this big game plan. As soon as I got sucker punched, all bets were off, and I was a fighter. And
speaking of that, by the way, that was that jiu-jitsu gym. Sorry to cut you off. I think you were talking about the jiu-jitsu gym. I did not know that about Eddie Kingston, but I feel like that even added an extra layer to him too.
Yeah, and I just my takeaway is I want to see more of that from them and from everyone else, just that fighter mentality. And I love their throwbacks to old school NWA, just paying that respect there and talking about the Crockett Cup. Homicide talking about how that's definitely a goal of his, and he's been watching since '89 and all this stuff. And so I thought those two guys, can't put them over enough. They are a great addition to the roster, to the team, for us getting to see them on a weekly basis, and just want to see more of that. I thought it was great.
Totally agree. So that would be the first piece of content after the Tuesday night Cardi Land discussion. For more of that, you can catch our live after show where we go in depth on Cardi Land. Make sure you hit subscribe and you can get access to all of those things. We'd love to have you check out all that stuff and follow along with us as we cover these deals. But speaking of Cardi Land, if you're not already a Patreon, you should be, because cool things happen. Like this week also marked the first time we got the Cardi Land council member calls. People, if you're a councilman or woman, council person, you get, is it once a month, Rob? Is that what it's supposed to be?
It's either once a month or bi-weekly.
Yeah, and you get to talk to talent on calls, like just a Zoom chat with whoever. So turns out this week, like if you got grouped in on, and I think it was like 2 or 3 people, maybe a little bit more, in a room with the talent. And on Wednesday night, it was Eli Drake. Thursday night, it was the champ, Nick Aldis. And Friday, it was Camille, of all people. I was actually supposed to be on Thursday night, and since the champ graced us with his presence on Tuesday night, I figured I wouldn't harass him that much, so I didn't stress on it and gave the wife some movie time. We just watched some stuff. And but Rob, you had Friday, and you got to hang out with Camille. How was that?
Oh man, she was laid back as can be. Of course, one of the things that we knew that Tom Latimer loves aliens and dinosaurs from some of Camille's other productions, and so Camille was just kind of sharing some stuff outside of the ring, which is the kind of endearing thing, because I think this is where we really see how the NWA loves and respects its fans, that they're interested in pulling back the curtains and letting you see them as real people. We see this with Thunder Rosa nearly every day. Of course, Camille does it every day also. And wrestling didn't really come up. I don't think it came up at all in any important way. We talked about the new telescope that Camille bought for Tom because of the SpaceX launch. And they got that, and they were going to go watch it from the telescope. And we talked about board games, and we talked about her career as a softball player and then later as a flag football player. And everybody just, it was so relaxed. And there was only, like I said, there was Tanya, my lovely wife, and myself, and then Heather Hunley and Mr. Knox, all very important members of the NWA fam and council members that were in this with Camille. So it was just 3 or 4 of us. And it was a very casual conversation, a lot like the one you're hearing right now between Will and Gary and I. And we were just hanging out. And she gave us about 30 minutes. And then I think she had a call before that, or maybe a call after that she had to go to. But she was very, very generous and very kind and very personable, very conversant, and we're not used to hearing Camille so willing to speak, but she was a chatterbox, man. She was great, very, very lovely, and talked about her interest in theater. That's something that's near and dear to my heart with Piper's Notes and all that. So if you're not a member, I don't know if there are council seats still available, but there are so many perks to being at least a Carneyland citizen that you guys need to consider that, because these are the kinds of things that they bring to you. And this, again, is just another way in which David Lagana and Billy Corgan, William Patrick Corgan, and all of the talent of the NWA show us their appreciation of how they love and respect us as fans.
Yeah, they it's funny, the Camille has surprised me just big time. Besides something like this, Camille has put out the most content. Like, her and Thunder Rosa kill it every single week. Like, Camille's already got something planned for Tuesday night, which is some old school Camille video. But she's also, she had 15 questions with Camille that came out this week. But last week she had 2 videos drop. She is making the most out of this quarantine time. But it's pretty impressive. My wife has already messed up one NWA shirt with the tie-dye kit now. So she's wearing it right now in another room. And so thanks to a Camille video that happened. And anyway, just thought I'd throw that out there. Thanks a lot, Camille. I just wanted to give the stare down for a second, see if I could look as threatening as her. Speaking of Thunder Rosa, let's talk about for a second too. She threw out some stuff this week. We kind of hit on jiu-jitsu and content creation, so that feels like a perfect combination to go into Thunder Rosa, because she's put out some content, one of which was she got her blue belt I don't know if it was exactly this week, but she put out the video this week of her getting her blue belt. I thought that was kind of cool. I know she was asking a lot of questions, and people would I watched the premiere, and she was kind of in the chat saying, do people like this? Do people want to see more of this? And I was like, absolutely. I think this is part of the fun, seeing your journey too, and just what you're pursuing in your off time. So just those diary things. For a person like me, that stuff works sometimes a lot better. Stuff that can almost be treated like a podcast, or stuff I don't have to be an exact place at an exact time that feels like it's made so that you can watch it later. But I know everybody's different. But what did you guys think about this? You guys both watch that?
I didn't catch it, but I plan on it, as you're saying, going back and watching it. So
I did watch it, and we watch a lot of. My wife is absolutely in love with Thunder Rosa. My wife, by the way, the lovely, elegant Tanya Stinson, is a 2nd-degree black belt in Taekwondo, and so wow. she is she's very enamored by Thunder Rosa and her MMA career and all this. And my wife's even thought about doing that. She's mostly been a point fighter, so it's not all balls to the wall. Just you're out there to eliminate somebody. It's mostly it's very precise and that kind of thing. That's what she does. But people don't realize when you're in jiu-jitsu, it's not like Taekwondo. You and I could go into Taekwondo and within a month or two have a second step. You don't get a blue belt in a month with jiu-jitsu. To achieve a black belt, you're talking about a 10 to 15 to 20 year investment, and a blue belt is a multi-year investment of time. And Thunder Rosa spoke about how she did not know she was getting her blue belt that day because in that school, they expect you to do the forms and perform them in the native language. And she did not know the language, but she could do the form. And giving all the considerations about social distancing and all the limitations, she was surprised when they put her belt on her. And she had earned it. No slight on her. She had earned she had demonstrated the skill, and she, said, I'm going to go back and learn the correct verbiage and all that for her. But she had done that, and that was just very inspirational. Again, and this is one of the things I feel like I'm repeating myself every week, but this is one of the things that I love about the NWA is like the NWA isn't trying to fool anybody. This is a performance sport. This is not sports entertainment. These are real people, real athletes with a real pursuit. They're not playing a character. They're not portraying something they're not. Eddie Kingston is real. Homicide is real. Nick Aldis is real. Camille is real. And Thunder Rosa is real. And they're not concerned about breaking kayfabe because there is no kayfabe. I mean, they are athletes. And, I love this element of Thunder Rosa showing this achievement because let's not forget, she's not a black belt in jiu-jitsu. She is the world's champion, though, in professional wrestling. And so she has reached the pinnacle in this one pursuit, and she's still pursuing the pinnacle in another. So she is someone who's continuously pursuing herself and well-rounding herself, and that is what great athletes do. She is a great athlete. My hat's off to her.
I agree. Another thing worth mentioning is that she did also put out another shorter video, which we don't have to dwell on too long because I don't think I can, but it's about Hana Kimura, her dedication to her, basically just that, I kind of slightly made a joke about it. It's just a sad story is what I mean, that I don't think I realized how close they were, but she had a very sweet story about Hana and how Thunder Rosa had been in Japan and injured herself or gotten a concussion, I believe it was, and was kind of out of it. And Hana at 16 had taken care of her and like kind of was her nurse. And so they had like a close relationship that every time Thunder Rosa was over there, like Hana was one of her friends that she would hang out with or talk to on a regular basis. So it kind of makes that hit closer to home when you think about like just I obviously like these people have these connections, but just even seeing somebody you sort of know, like it brings it that much closer to see somebody like Thunder Rosa telling the story and about this person. And we'll get into that a little bit more with the Girl Power episode. But did you guys have anything else you wanted to add in regards to this?
You guys have to listen to the Girl Power episode. We'll get into that in a minute. I don't want to really add commentary onto what any of these ladies said because, they said what they needed to say in perfect fashion. It's the message that we all need to hear, man. Bullying, and we've talked about this in previous episodes. We have got, as a society, we have got to be charitable to one another. We have got to find a way to learn that simple maxim that we were all taught as kids, that if you don't have anything good to say, just keep your mouth closed. People hurt. You don't know what another person's situation is. You don't know where they've been. You don't know how they feel. Mental illness is something that as a society, I'm not going to say mental illness, but mental health is something that as a society, we're just really coming to be sensitive to. It's really getting traction these days. And, we could go on and on about this, but the bottom line is that there was a lot of great content put out this week. The most important content that was put out this week was by the women of the NWA in their multiple venues.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. I'll say one thing related to what you said a second ago, Rob, about just the realness and these are performance athletes. Like, that's one thing I've been thinking about. We touched on it a minute ago with Kingston and Homicide, but like, and I can't think of a personality in the NWA that's not real. I mean, from Zicky Dice to, no longer part of the NWA, but Ricky Starks, who Gary, you've talked to a couple of times. He's the same guy when you talk to him as he is, and it's like, you don't see that a lot. Typically you see these characters, and when they do interviews, they are quote unquote real, and it's kind of cool to see them be real. Like the performers in the NWA, like that's who they are, and it again just adds that layer of believability to everything they do, from Aldis all the way to Trevor Murdoch and everyone. Like it's just that's who they are, and I think that's a lost art in professional wrestling. that went away for some reason, probably as we've talked about before, but maybe like the Attitude Era kind of ruined that and really kind of started making people have to come up with these characters that are outside of who they are, you know, as a person. And that's why I feel there's just so much more authenticity to the NWA because of that. And so when we enter a period like this, you know, where a pandemic hits and we can't get live wrestling every week, the characters live on because it's who they really are, you know. So we're not losing any storyline, we're not losing any momentum on Kingston and Homicide because they're still obviously worried about Pope, and that's it's a real thing. It's not just like their on-screen character, like that's who they are. And I think even that with Thunder Rosa and with you know, the ladies from Girl Power and stuff like that. I mean, I agree that if you only watched one piece of content from the NWA this week, watch Girl Power. And I really don't even know how much commentary we can add to it, because my recommendation would be go listen to those ladies tell their stories and give their commentary, because we're not going to be able to do it justice. But I love that aspect of it, that even during a time like this, we're getting quality content. Storylines aren't hurting, creatives not hurting, characters aren't hurting, because the continuity's there, and I just love that.
Yeah, since you kind of hit on it, I guess we'll consider this the time that we also bring in Girl Power as a segment people should watch. I mean, literally my notes on the thing, and we can add anything you guys want, but I'll just run down my notes real quick. As I just said, there's an emotional tribute from Thunder Rosa. It was a triple threat conversation in there with Allison Kay, Marty Bell, and Thunder Rosa. Ashley Vox, Camille, and May Valentine all show up at some point to give a few words. And my next notes are literally, I don't even know what to tell you about this. If you haven't seen this, watch it. That's your homework, and it's mandatory. You just have to watch this. And so that's what I got for it. I mean, it's you can't really. It was. I have no shame in saying that I DM'd every single one of these ladies that was involved in this thing and told them that I appreciated them opening themselves up like this to discuss this stuff, that I can't imagine how hard it is to tell stories like they told. And they all had a story, at least one story that got dropped in there about something personally that they've dealt with in the same realm. And at the end of the day, that's the part that just makes me the most bummed out about it, is just like hearing that, like, oh, you all have it. I mean, it's like you kind of know, but then like when you're hearing the stories, like, why is the world such a place that each one of these girls has multiple stories about this same exact thing? Like, get it together, people. Like, treat people with respect.
It's just like, it's this tension between like, I don't want to know about this, and like, this has to be told, because the realities of these stories need to enter into the universe so that people can process it and that they can change, and that you know, we can acknowledge, you know, what needs to be done as a society. So you know, there's again nothing I can add to it. And the most glaring, not glaring, but the most, you know, positive reaction we as recapping content can give is just go watch it, go listen to it. Like that's all we can really say.
Just some a little bit of insight too. And again, this doesn't have any bearing on anything, but Camille did reveal to us in our talent call that she was invited to be on the three-way call with Thunder Rosa and Allison Kay and Marty and all them. And she told us in our little group session that she just it was too emotional of a moment for her, that she is very protective of how she is perceived and this and that. And she wanted to do something under a much more controlled setting that she could then, you know, release and contribute that way. But she was invited to be on that call, and I imagine many of the other women of the NWA were too.
It's interesting to hear that, yeah. And Camille's segment of it, it was kind of interesting to see her approach it in this way, that obviously she's still emotional in the situation, but she even mentions, like, this is not Camille talking to you, this is Kaylee. Like, I'm talking to you as a human being, like a person. And it was just, you know, for all the stuff we talked about, the mixture of like there's no real kayfabe. It was like her being very clear, like, I'm coming at you from a really vulnerable, real place right now. And so it was still interesting to see her do that. I mean, Camille, for, you know, she dropped in there that some of the issues that she's dealt with, but it's amazing to see how far she's come along too with, you know, I've seen Camille. Camille has no problem. Like, her and Allison Kay seem to be the ones I've seen do it the most. Like, they will just bring that crap right to the forefront, like, just like post it up and like, here's some trash somebody's saying. And,
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but
if you put this, if you post this or you send this in my DMs, I'm gonna post it. Yeah, they have no problem doing that.
yeah,
we were gonna approach her about Piper's Festival. It's like, you know what, man? Ain't no way in the world I'm going into her DMs. Ain't no way.
She's a good girl. I mean, a nice person is what I mean. And like, but it is funny how like everybody's got this different way to handle it. Thunder Rosa's been straight out on her videos before. She's like, I've seen her say, like, if you drop some stuff in my DMs, there's a good chance my husband's reading it too, because he handles a lot of my social media. So just FYI, if you're sending some stuff over, you might be sending it to my husband. So it's an interesting way to put it. So keep it in your pants. That's what I'm saying. People, stop it. Jay-Z Flair had Nick Aldis on the show. I have not personally had a chance to listen to it, but I think it's worth mentioning because we haven't talked much about Jay-Z Flair and the Jay-Z Flair show on here, the Bojangles champ, but he deserves a shout out. He's definitely a member of the NWA community, so I just wanted to throw it in there. Have you guys listened to his show? Are you familiar with Jay-Z Flair? Will, or do you know him at all?
Absolutely, yeah. I regularly listen to his show. I love him.
Yeah, Will, he's the chicken champ. You gotta check him out. He is worth a follow, by the way, on Twitter and everywhere, just because he is a very positive individual. And guys like him and like Turbo, those guys on Twitter, I enjoy following them just for the content they put out just on Twitter, just the positivity that they bring out every week. Just keeps me in the right headspace sometimes. So shout out to those folks.
They're great, man. And Will, do you follow Jay-Z Flair or Bojangles Champion?
I do. Yeah, I just haven't listened to the Aldis.
Man, he's got an amazing collection of title belts that he often has his wife display, and it's amazing. I look forward to those posts all the time, man. They're amazing. They're a great family, and just super positive. Just like Turbo is, and that characterizes a lot of people in the NWA fam. I think of guys like Frank Mandolini and other people that are always pushing positivity and putting out good stuff.
Will, we're gonna get to some news stuff from you, so don't think I've forgotten about you. I don't want you to think that. But let's hit on Billy Corgan. Just did some more positivity. He dropped a Instagram video where he did a deep dive. It's 29 years old, his album, and here's where we're going to have some words, Robert, because I'm not sure how this works. I have always called it Gish. Is it Gish? Is that how it's pronounced? It sounded like you said Gish earlier off camera.
I say Gish. I say Gish. Maybe I say Gish.
Oh, I thought you spelled it Gish earlier, and I was like, have I been saying it wrong forever?
I might have had some might have had some ice in my mouth, but I think it's pronounced Gish.
Okay. All right. So Gish, the very first Smashing Pumpkins album, came out 29 years ago this week or this past week. And Billy Corgan agreed to do a deep dive as part of one of his, that man, by the way, as far as busy people doing good content, that guy's been having Q&As regularly, interacting with people. He had a mental health discussion with Thunder Rosa on his Instagram stories and doing it live for everybody. But he also goes into a deep dive with Gish. I personally have not heard it yet, but I'm very much looking forward to it because of the 29th anniversary. I've been listening to the album all this week, so it'll be cool to hear. But hopefully, I'm hoping, Robert, if you've seen it, maybe you know better, but I'm hoping everybody was nice. I've heard good reports, but Billy Corgan is another person who suffers no fools. he gets very short with anybody being a troll or being a smart ass. And so he's just kind of done with you. And so everybody kept asking about, like, when is this one going to happen? And when is this was going to happen? He's like, let's see if I'm okay with how the first one goes. And then we'll talk about another one. So hopefully it went well for Mr. Corgan.
It seemed to go well. I had it playing. I'm doing some work in our in the studios of Piper's Notes here, and I had it playing in the background. And I didn't, I wasn't listening carefully. I was listening to because I really love the Smashing Pumpkins, and that's one of my favorite albums. And so it was interesting to hear it. But I thought it was pretty good. I'd love to see him do a Pisces Iscariot deep dive, and also Melancholy. I'd love to see that one. So I hope it's something he continues.
Will, do you want to do your news segment here? Will's got some breaking news, not breaking news.
We kind of skipped over the Eli Drake show. I don't know if
I have it here. I'm just marking stuff off. We'll go to the Eli Drake show. Let's talk about the Eli Drake show.
The OCD in me, I was like, wait a minute, we skipped a day.
Well, we went into girl power because the conversation about Thunder Rosa went into girl power. The conversation about Thunder Rosa happened because Kingston mentioned jiu-jitsu, and then we were talking about Camille and her content, that it felt like Thunder Rosa. Naturally, that's how I mapped it in my brain, which drove us right around Eli Drake. But we'll go back on May the 28th. Eli Drake show number 2 dropped, and he told. I did appreciate his one story that he told up top about how he went like an hour into episode 1 and realized that his mic was unplugged the entire time. I have been there.
So that jumped out to me too, and I was watching it on my phone, and I started laughing, and my wife asked me what it was, and I told her the story. It's funny to us as podcasters because we understand that, but it was really funny to me because I actually had that thought as I was watching last week. I was like, man, that is not like a really good mic apparently, but it wasn't even plugged in for certain segments, I guess. But like, and actually the first time I was on here with you, Gary, for the NWA Power recap, I was super proud, and I had my mic here, and I was like, man, I'm going to use this mic finally. And we went that whole thing, and then I went back and watched some of it the next day, and I was like, that it wasn't even plugged in. It was not even like, it wasn't even turned on, and like it was just going through my computer speakers, and I was like, oh man, like what a waste. So that was really funny to me. But the one part the reason I wanted to go back and talk about that is because I feel like a lot of his discussions can launch us into some discussions about some wrestling things, which I really appreciated. Rob, I think he heard you last week, stick to wrestling. He did get a little political, but we don't have to talk about that. But
I was going to say he had a Trump rant, but it was brief.
Yeah, we don't have to talk about that. But
no, let's focus in.
So
no, I'm just kidding.
Okay, so no, but he mentioned the tweet from Brian Pillman Jr. saying that he believes that wrestling now is better, and that we often remember wrestling from back in the day with rose-colored glasses because of the nostalgia or the historical aspect of it. And I wanted to get you guys' take, for the three of us as kind of lifelong students of the art of professional wrestling, your thoughts on Pillman's comment, and then Eli's reaction to that, which was strange because he even mentioned, I want to agree with that because I am a wrestler now, and I would love to think that what we do now is much better. But I don't think he went so far as to agree with him. So what were you guys' thoughts on that whole idea and that tweet from Brian Pillman?
I heard that same thing, and that's actually in my notes too. And my thought is, Pillman is young. He's young, and I imagine being a second generation star, he's well conversant, and he's probably educated on wrestling. But wrestling is very monolithic. It's a lot like politics and other major entities, football or baseball or whatever. I don't think that professional wrestling is better, because I think that in some ways there have been parts of pro wrestling that have always been pure. And in any world, if you can go back to the 1980s. I really first started getting aware of pro wrestling in like 1980, 1981. This is when I was just getting young enough to listen to Gordon Soley. But even at that young age, there was a lot of wrestling out there, a lot of, different promotions. Those were the territories now. So, but you had territories that were killing it and territories that were just silly. And for me, I always, even as a kid, I always viewed as the WWF, and Gary's going to have a different opinion on this because he was raised differently and was exposed to wrestling in a different way. I always viewed WWF as a caricature. It's not real wrestling. And so I felt like back then you had really good wrestling, and then you didn't. And then even during the wilderness years, I tweeted something last night or today, I can't remember, but about Reverend Dan Wilson, who was a pretty, J-Cal will know who Dan Wilson is. You guys may not, but he was a guy that was big in like the NWA Anarchy days during the wilderness years. And even though you didn't have a lot of mainstream appeal, that was a very vibrant time. And there was a lot of really good wrestling going on. And some of the best stuff was going on in like NWA Atlanta, NWA Chattanooga. Whereas, you had this scourge, this black spot going on with like the Attitude Era and ECW and stuff like that. And so I guess my response is that there are parts of wrestling now that are as good as it's ever been. And I think primarily the NWA. And then I think there are parts that are atrocious, but it's always been that way. Wrestling is big, and you paint with you paint with a full spectrum. And in any era, even going back to the Luthez and the Human Orchid era of Gorgeous George, you had really good wrestling and really bad wrestling. So I hear what he's saying, and I think that he was trying to point to things like going on in Impact and Ring of Honor and the NWA especially as being really, really recovering something that was lost. But honestly, and again, I defer to J-Cal on this. He will tell you none of that was ever lost. That really sound pure wrestling has never ceased, and we're just seeing it reemerge now and getting some really good exposure.
I think
go ahead. Sir.
I think as a young guy, I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, I can imagine, of course, his dad wrestled, which, by the way, last night I was watching Clash of the Champions 10, and I just have to say that Flying Brian Pillman and the Z-Man were the best looking most handsome tag team I think I've ever seen. Like when they came out, for some reason, I was just like, oh, wow, And it was,
Tell us more, Will.
Well, I can't, as my wife knows.
When those oils and greases was just bubbling up on them,
they had every muscle you could have. Like every muscle you could possibly have, they had it, and you could see it. Like it was crazy. But anyways, so Flying Brian Jr., definitely a young guy, and you can imagine, if you grew up and you primarily had WWE as mainstream wrestling, and I'm sure he's watched some other stuff, and then you enter into now where you've got multiple players, AEW, Ring of Honor, NWA, obviously. Yeah, I can see why you would say what he said, and if that's your style, the kind of high flying stuff. And so I get where he's coming from. I think I really agree with Eli's response, which was he would like to think that it's more athletic now than it was 30 years ago, but there's a lot of lost arts like selling. I really, really agreed with what he talked about people not selling nowadays and how that's atrocious. Kicking out of multiple finishers, things like that. That was stuff that was unheard of, back in the day. And so that's something that I think needs to be, put back into professional wrestling culture, that reverence for finishing moves, that the selling that used to take place. And you go watch anything pre-Attitude Era and you'll see people actually selling stuff, and it kind of blows your mind. Like that's how I feel when I go watch that old like NWA WCW stuff. Is just like Ric Flair was the world's champ and was selling every punch, and you don't see that a lot of times nowadays. So I don't know, Gary, what were you saying?
Oh, I was just gonna say that. I mean, I'm glad you brought up Eli's point of view on that, because it's so funny to me. Like, you guys handled this, especially you, Rob, in such a diplomatic fashion, like way nicer than I expected you to sound on that. I expected Rob to be a bad cop on this. So if he's not going to do it, I guess I will. No, I don't think it's better now than it was then. I don't. I think that if you're talking about the athletic skill of the people involved, then by all means, sure. Wrestling right now is better than it ever has been. People could do some crazy ass stuff that nobody back then would even think about doing. Like, there's no way they would have ever comprehended it. Now, I will say I softened a bit hearing Rob talk about it, because Rob did mention that the art has not technically been lost. It just got kind of covered up a little bit. So that makes sense. Because I was going to say, you mentioned my love of WWF, WWE, and like growing up in that. But aside from my like early years up until about like 12 or 13 of just thinking the Ultimate Warrior was the greatest wrestler that ever existed, you know, that was like the furthest I ever got into that realm. After that, it was always guys like Bret the Hitman Hart and Mr. Perfect and those kind of wrestlers that I thought were the best wrestlers. And Shawn Michaels was in there and that sort of thing. Like, I loved people that looked like they were actually really, really good wrestlers, like that they legitimately knew what they were doing, and there was some kind of specialness about their skill, like that they had, that like these were top athletes. And so even though WWE/F is absolutely a cartoon compared to what NWA was, those guys seem like they could have been dropped into NWA and function perfectly fine. So I didn't feel that way about like Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan, you know, I've grown to respect what he was to the business, but I never liked him. I never liked Hulk Hogan. I always thought he was a joke. I was not ever a Hulkamaniac. I didn't care, and I hoped Macho Man would kill him. But anyway, all that out of the way. I mean, the thing is I think you kind of covered most everything I would say about it. That like, I know he's a polarizing figure to bring up, but Jim Cornette, I think that in the middle of all of his rage, like he actually makes some valid points and some valid criticism sometimes when it comes to wrestling that I actually do agree with. I watched Stadium Stampede, for instance, and I was not mad. I didn't get angry about that match. I didn't hate the world or anything, and I definitely didn't rant like the one he just ranted on that I listened to the other day on his podcast. But I think that it does look like it. It's weird that a guy like Jericho's involved with that, to me, because he apparently heard Cornette's reaction, and he mentioned on some interview I saw where he said that, yeah, Corny, well, you know, he booked me in this segment where I used to like his face on a cake or something. You know, like I slammed his face in a cake, and Corny was like, okay, yeah, but people believed that's what you would have done because I was an asshole. And like, you slammed my face down, and it made sense in the storyline. I have trouble reconciling what I saw at Stadium Stampede and like how you could, like, what, I don't want to hate on those guys, but I get people that are especially more invested in the business as it was, having a huge problem with that, because how do you make that work logically? Like, how does something like that stuff happens, and then you want us to take a main event title match seriously? I know that you're supposed to be able to work it out, that it's all a show and stuff like that, but even in the show, like, I feel like in movies, even if I'm watching like a horror movie and there's a haunted house movie, when the ghost takes a cab to Las Vegas and is like running around a casino when he was supposed to be haunting the house. I know it's a weird analogy. My point is, it's like, you're supposed to have rules, and you're supposed to have a set universe that this is occurring in, and there's a logical setup within that constructed universe. And now you're like well, yeah, that exists, but also this exists. And it just seems stupid. And
Yeah.
so anyway, I could rant all day or ramble all day about it. But my point is that I think that wrestling back in the day, dude, we watched them. I was on RJ's show that I haven't mentioned yet, but I'll throw out there. I'll be on there Wednesday. But we rewatched the Great American Bash match that I think we all watched on Cast. But we watched the Great American Bash where it ended in Sting versus Flair, and Sting won the world title. That's real. Like that crowd reaction, that stuff is real. And those crowd reactions we've seen on those old NWA pay-per-views and like the Starcades and the Great American Bash, man, that's not anything I've seen recently. That's not anything I've seen in a long time. Those people were invested in a fight. That's better. That's better when you make them care about it and you make it feel like if everybody's going to suspend their disbelief, there's like letting people suspend their disbelief, and there's just like telling people to suspend their disbelief and kicking them over a ledge. It's a different thing.
Yeah, I think
AEW too represents Will with his question, with Pillman's with the whole point about something being lost. I think AEW. First of all, let me say point A. There's lots of really great talent in the WWF that really represents some of the best technical wrestling, from Bret Hart to Ricky Steamboat to Mike Rotunda to even Barry Windham went through there to Randy Savage, Mr. Perfect. There was some great talent. So no shade on that at all. I'm painting in a really broad brush about sort of the cartoonish nature, the marketing to kids that you didn't see so much in the NWA during the Crockett days. Point two, the AEW, I think, is sort of a microcosm of that question. It represents and it contains within one entity, I suppose, the best and the worst of wrestling today. You've got some really, really great stuff going on, man. I think of like Hikaru Shida and winning the women's title, man. That is so amazing. What a great match. I think of Cody Rhodes and the stuff he's doing. I'm a huge mark for Brody Lee, man. I love that guy. I think that he's been just waiting to be used properly. And then there are other things that are on the other side of the spectrum. But my third point, the art of selling, let's not forget, one of the worst sellers ever was Bruiser Brody and Carlos Colon. Those guys were notorious for no selling. And there's a very legendary match between Bruiser Brody and Lex Luger, where Lex Luger would do this and that. Brody was no selling it. He would do that. That wasn't the only time. Speaking about selling, you want to talk about the art of selling today? You look at Marty Scurll and Nick Aldis. You look at how many people that Nick Aldis tapped out in an age where nobody taps out anymore. We don't have the submission hold is not a thing. The sleeper hold is not a thing. But how many times did he tap someone out with the King's Lynn Cloverleaf firm with Aldis Crusade? So, you've got all these things. And Eli Drake and Brian Pillman, again, they are conversant. They're knowledgeable about the sport, but they're younger guys. And obviously, with the amount of stuff out there, they're not going to know everything. But I guess my position would be that wrestling, more or less, it's kind of like a bell curve. It more or less stays the same over time. You have to be discriminate about what the good stuff and the bad stuff is.
Yeah, and I think, when you talk about things like Stadium Stampede and stuff like that, to me, I don't have a problem with the match, and it's entertaining, and that's what it's meant to be. So it accomplishes its purpose. I think my problem, and a lot of like pure wrestling fans, their problem is the fact that it was the main event of the night. It was put over as like the greatest thing that AEW did at Double or Nothing, and it wasn't even really a wrestling match. And you talk about Great American Bash, wrestling should culminate in a world title match. And I've always had a problem with the fact that there'd be a world title match like there was between Jon Moxley and Brody King, and that not be the main event. Right. Like that, to me, that's where the disconnect is. And it's like, if they had done the Stadium Stampede in the middle of the show or started the show off with it or something like that as a gimmick match. Gimmick matches are not new. Those happened 30 years ago as well, even outside the ring. I was just looking it up to make sure I got it right. But the first one I remember was 95 when Dustin Rhodes and I think it was Blacktop. I forget his name.
Blacktop
but they
Bully?
had Blacktop Bully, and they had a match in the trailer of a truck,
I remember
like
that.
driving down the road, the Keep
Yeah,
the Road
right.
match. And I went back and watched that a year or two ago, and it was just insane. I mean, they had cameras on this truck, like driving down on a back road, and it was just crazy. So, I mean, this stuff isn't new, like trying to think outside the box and be entertaining, but that was not the main event of the night, and it was not the main attraction. And it felt like AEW billed that Stadium Stampede as the main attraction, and it probably shouldn't have been from a pure wrestling standpoint.
It's kind of interesting because, like, as you guys talk about it, like, I soften more and more, and like, I'm probably a hypocrite because, like, I could look all day and say, like, cinematic matches are crap, but at the same time, I was kind of down with the AJ Styles Undertaker match at WrestleMania. I didn't hate that. I thought that was kind of fun, and
that was the last match of the night, though. Like,
yeah,
it shouldn't have been the main event.
You could twist my arm, and if it meant that you got another Undertaker match or two out of it, then I might be okay with it. And if it was like it gets you Undertaker versus Sting one day, like stuff like that, I'm like, all right, fine, I'll take it. They at least met, but I don't know. Maybe that is it. Maybe it's that it feels like the focus is going solely onto that, because you're right. There's always been stuff. I mean, freaking Undertaker's made lightning shoot down from the ring, and Cade's, makes fire come out of the turnbuckles and stuff like that. So it's weird. Wrestling's always had some funky stuff.
It's a situation where the biggest star in the company is undoubtedly Chris Jericho. I mean, he is the one. Like, there are a lot of great talent in that company, but Chris Jericho, more than anybody, is the one that, like, everybody who's not even into wrestling, they know who he is. He's the Hogan. He's the Stone Cold Steve Austin. So this is a situation where the company is still trying to Jericho is still drawing that main event status, and so they've got to find a way to put him in there. And again, like Will was saying, this is not new. They built whole pay-per-views around stuff like that, like War Games. War Games, you'd have belts defended at War Games, but the War Games match, the gimmick match was it. And even like, Survivor Series and Royal, I mean, those are all gimmicks in a way. I think
those, though, at least look like people were trying to kill each other. I should stop saying kill each other, but they're trying to actually fight and win.
Yeah.
This has, like, Matt Hardy getting dunked underwater and coming up as different versions of himself throughout history.
No, I'm with you, man. Yeah, and that's where I have into, like, the cartoonishness that I don't like. I wasn't a fan of the Stampede match. I guess my interpretation is what they're trying to do with their company and their fan base is that, if you ever watch Chris Jericho come out, I don't care if he's a heel or not. That Joker still called Le Champion, He is over like a rover. This Joker is big time. When he comes out, everybody sings. Even the freaking locker room sings. And so they have to, right now, whether you like it or not, I mean, I agree with Will. The world title match should be the main event, always. But in this case, Chris Jericho is the most over person, and so they're putting him into the main event somehow, some way.
Well, Will, you set the thing off. I mean, good job with you, because now we're in it. Now we're having a discussion. But so props to Will for that. But no, my other thing I would add to that is that the one thing I think is irritating for some people, we hear about all the time with, like, the people that came back for stuff like NWA that haven't been watching for forever. Well, AEW tried to present themselves as this alternative. And again, everything I'm saying here, I'm not mad. Like, I'm not fired up about it. Like, I like AEW fine. Like, I'm not one of the people that hates it. There are people there that I really, really dig. And I will take, like, a Cody Rhodes match over a Stadium Stampede match any day of the week, though. That's just how I lean. But there was this promise of the sports-based alternative. That's the thing you'll keep seeing from, like, WWE. But now it sounds like it almost feels like they fell into the trap of the WWE, like all of the stuff that people kind of hated about WWE, that they were like, oh God, then at least it was like, well, here's the 24/7 title, or here's the hardcore title that could happen at any time, whatever. At least this is happening earlier on in the show, like Will said, but now, like, the main event of the show is one of these comedy segments. And it's I I can see why people are frustrated. I can see why it's irritating. Again, I watched it. I was fine. I was like, there were funny spots and it was cool, but it was also like, did I have any emotional investment in it? No, not at all.
And I mean,
No.
I watched the whole event except for the Stadium Stampede. After the Moxley match, which was an incredible match, great wrestling match, wonderful story was told, great finish, and some over-the-top spots, them going through the ramp. I mean, that was, not your traditional, pro wrestling stuff. But as far as I was concerned, the event was over after that. And I really didn't have any like preconceived notions as to what the Stadium Stampede was. I just knew that there were really not any real stakes to that match. I knew it was gonna be a crazy spot fest, which is fine. There are people that love that, and I don't hate on them for loving that. If that's your thing, like, great. For me, it's not. For me, I want to see that world title fight, and then I'm checking out. Not that I don't care about anything else, but I love the lead up. I love the traditional. We're going to start here with some grudge matches. We're going to have some, showcase matches of stuff that you're interested in. We're going to have some mid-card titles, some tag team stuff, and then it's all going to culminate in the prize fight for the big, the whole big cheese, the world title. And then after that, like that should be your biggest pop of the night. And we talked about that even with Nick on I just call him Nick. We're on a first name basis now. No, the champ, the national treasure, Nick Aldis, on Tuesday, that the title should and will remain the most important thing in the promotion, the world's title. And so if that's being defended, there's no, like, logically, you just cannot convince me that something else should be after that on the card, and that's just where I come from. And so for me, and to me,
an agreement there. I think we all share the same opinion on that. We have to remember that all of the title matches that they did give us were all quality. And the AEW is like a first cousin to the NWA, whereas the WWE is like related by marriage twice removed. You know what I mean? They're much closer to us than the WWE is. And yeah, Stadium Stampede, I'm with you, man. It shouldn't be the attraction. It shouldn't be. But
I think that's like the fighting like brothers though thing too. It's like you're like, oh, this was the one that's supposed to be closest, and now you're pulling some garbage. But it's not to say, and sorry to cut you off, Rob, but it's also not to say the NWA doesn't do some stuff. I mean, Monrovia.
Come on now. Back up. No.
You talking about Mama Storm now, or are we just
not on this episode. Mama Storm, I'm with you. Yeah, don't be going.
I would never have anything come out of me negative about Mama Storm. That would not happen.
Danny Deal's Mama Storm was atrocious.
That's some garbage.
I agree.
This is a disgrace to who is, in my opinion, the first lady of the NWA. All right. Hey, Rob, you've got Nikita Koloff on Piper's Notes this week.
Yes. Well, he will. We recorded with him this week. We're several weeks in post-production, so we've got, this will probably reach the air here in 8 or 9 weeks from now. Actually, this week we're going to have here. Danny Jordan's coming out this week on Friday, which is a great one. But we did. But my conversation with Nikita is fresh on my mind because we just had, I think it was Monday night or Tuesday night. I can't quite remember. Might have been Tuesday night after Carney Land, and right before we actually it was Tuesday. We had Carney Land, then we did Nikita, and then we did our post show. Yeah, it was great, man. Very gracious. A lot of insight into him. He's a very spiritual person, and a lot of that's going to come out in this, and we are too in our household. I'm not ashamed of that. We react to DC Talks Jesus Freak, but we get a lot of background. I don't know if you guys follow the band DC Talk or Toby Mac or any of those in Christian rock. They're a pretty big deal.
I believe I told you earlier about my religious background, Rob. Yeah. So if you think that I got through there without some third day in DC Talk and all of that stuff, then
my youngest daughter's named Petra.
Yeah.
Well, I think I asked you like dead on, like early on in our friendship. I was like, "Is your daughter named after that Christian rock band?"
My first CD that I ever bought, my first compact disc was a Petra CD.
My wife had no clue who Petra was. My wife was not raised in the same context I was, but
Your child or the band?
She has since become a Petra fan since that because of Petra. She's like, I want to hear this Petra band. I mean, so it's purely sentimental for her. But Nikita was great, and we do delve. And one of the things that for people who've not yet listened to Piper's Notes, one of the things that we want to do with our show. Obviously, I'm very passionate about wrestling. I love it, but these talent personalities, they get on these interviews and they go through the same ritual and routine time after time after time. And if you listen to the Hannibal TV interview with Nikita Koloff, you're going to know his story. He's going to talk a lot about who he went to school with and him discovering Animal and some of the tragedy he went through with his wife and Magnum T. A lot of people don't realize that Nikita and I are actually related. My Mandy, his deceased wife, her brother is my father-in-law. So we're related by marriage to Nikita Koloff. Her Mandy's brother is Bo, who is my father-in-law, Tanya's stepdad, actually. And so that's a familial connection we share. But you go through his tragedies and his best of 7 series with Magnum TA. In our interviews, we don't really like to go that way because I think people can get that in other sources. We want to get into them being human beings and like where their cultural interests are, because this is where Piper's at in her life. What's on their iPod right now? Who would they want to be if they could be anybody in a Broadway musical? What board game is their favorite? That kind of thing. So we're going to get into a lot of that, and then we give Nikita time to share his personal testimony, and that's his mission, and that's great, and we let him share that on our show, and it's just a wonderful discussion, and we can't wait for that to come out. But this Friday will be Danny Jordan, which was another one of my favorite episodes yet. She was awesome and very, very hospitable to us, as best a mean girl can be, and so look forward to that coming out on Friday.
Yeah, Danny Jordan, like right when you said that, I got excited. Danny Jordan is one of my favorite interviews that I've gotten to do. Like I really enjoy talking to her. She was a lot of fun, and she's got cool stories, it seems like. So I'm excited to see her and Piper interact. So that'll be fun. Oh, yeah. I skipped right over, and I'm sorry. I could feel Will being irritated with me, like off camera.
I'm just irritated because your camera's suddenly so blurry again. I don't know why.
What happened, man?
I can't tell. I can never tell if it's your camera or if like I just get like 2 drinks into this and I'm like,
put a picture of Jennifer up, man. Just put a picture of Jennifer up and that'd be sufficient.
I could do that. I mean, there's me and Jennifer right there.
Leave it like that.
We'll just leave it like that. There's there we are. Oh God, no.
Be nicer to you now.
Don't let's not hurt the people. They want this, not that. Do I look better now? Do I look clearer?
Yeah, you do. You look.
Yeah.
I wanted to say about the Eli Drake thing. I skipped right over this because we got caught up in that other conversation. But I did like his story about Don Callis, like how blunt he was about that story about how he felt wronged by this guy, and then it's just fun to hear. I guess even a big tough wrestler have those same regrets of like, oh man, if I had that to do over again, I would have, like, and he just wishes he would have pie-faced Don Callis, like when he reached out to shake his hand or whatever. And I just thought that was interesting to me. Also, he did tell some Carney stories in there and had the whole part about like when he first started out, not knowing what to ask for. I thought that was like probably the most useful bit of information in the whole show, was just like him talking about when he would show up at a wrestling show and just stand around and just think that something would get offered to him. Maybe they'd be like, hey, do you want to work for us or whatever? Because he didn't know how to, go up and just say what he wanted. And that was part of what he had to learn, was like, you've got to go ahead and make yourself known and put yourself out there and push yourself in the door, basically. And I thought that was kind of interesting stuff. The only other thing I got that I wanted to hit on is that we'll get to some more breaking news with Will, maybe. Actually, let's just go do that, because I'll save one of these for my putting it over segment. Well, what else you got, buddy?
Breaking news like 5 days ago, but now this is the This is just kind of the weekly roundup. So I didn't.
I was going to say, this is what happens when there's no Hey, It's Will daily.
And I apologize to both of the regular watchers of that show that I didn't put out daily content. But we all have weeks that we just need to chill and rest a little bit. There's a lot going on this week, and so thank you guys for understanding. I'll be back at it next week. But I did have a few news stories from just around the wrestling world that I figured we could just kind of quick hit, get some reactions to, and stuff just worth mentioning. So first of all, we have Deonna Purrazzo. Are you guys familiar? Have you guys seen her with Women of Honor? And she was in NXT for a while. But she is going to be part of the next round of Impact taping. So she's not under contract, but she's kind of on a per appearance basis. And I love Deonna Purrazzo. I'd love to have her in NWA. I think she'd be a great fit, but I'm just glad that she's landed somewhere after being released from WWE. I think her non-compete ended on May 22nd, so she was able to explore other options at that point. And so I hope it works out for her and Impact or wherever she ends up. I just hope wherever she ends up, she's utilized, because she was, when I first got into Ring of Honor, which was kind of my first venture away from WWE, the mainstream, wrestling, that eventually led me here to the NWA ultimately. But she was very much a fixture in the women's division there. And she was kind of one of the first that showed me what like real women's wrestling could look like. And so I'm a big Deonna fan. And so I hope she does well over there. I don't know if you guys have heard that or if you had any reactions to that. No,
I've
nothing.
heard that. I've heard. Yeah, I've heard that. Go ahead, Gary.
No, you go ahead. I mean, I don't really have much to add to it. I know who she is, but I was never like really invested in her career. Like, I mean, not like I have anything against her. I just have not seen much out of her, and I don't watch Impact. So it's pretty worthless news from Will, in my opinion.
Wow. I slave at the news desk all day, watching the ticker to try to bring you useful news. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I'm also kidding. I'm happy for it. At least it's good to. I mean, the definite good part is that the wrestling business is in such a place that people have other opportunities besides WWE, and so there are places for these talents to go to. So
right, and
that's what I can say for that.
On a personal level, and for some storyline continuity from Hey, It's Will Daily a couple weeks ago, one of the things I talked about was kind of this dark cloud over wrestling right now, which was the Black Wednesday where 30 people were released from WWE, and it's just kind of a black mark on professional wrestling as a whole. And so one of my things right now, just for the overall morale of professional wrestling, is I really just can't wait to see all these people land somewhere, just because they're all worthwhile talent. And so I love seeing her land where she landed. FTR, they debuted on AEW this week, which was really cool. So they've kind of landed there. And so I'm going to continue to celebrate wherever these, WWE, former WWE talents end up, because I think that's important just to the wrestling community, that they all find a spot and can shine somewhere. So I thought that was definitely worth mentioning. But Eli Drake, you ever heard of him, Gary? You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, it sounds familiar. Yeah.
So he's gonna be on a video game, and he's gonna be joining we talked about it on Tuesday, the Virtual Basement, the independent video game company that's making a wrestling game. He has signed on to be part of that. So we'll have digital Eli Drake in video game form, which is kind of cool. Zicky
like
Dice
that.
is also
I think Danny Jordan's going to be on that also.
She is.
And Zicky Dice, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and American
Zicky.
Kaiju, Lindsay Snow is going to be on that one. All these people are people. Yeah, all of these people have appeared in NWA. I will say what was funny, or what was interesting to me, I just finished recording an episode of the NWA Rewind. Yes, that's coming back. But Masked Fan is a gamer, and we were having a discussion about just because in the episode we were reviewing, you obviously had the Retromania Wrestling from Retrosoft Studios in there, and he had made a comment that he was a big fan of Fire Pro Wrestling, and so he was excited about it. He said that back a few years ago, TNA Impact had done a video game, but it was kind of crappy. Like you could only do like 5 moves, and that was because WWE and their 2K series or whatever had kind of licensed all of the moves or something like that in there. And I don't know if there's truth to that or not, but I am so interested to find out, because he said that like it really limited like if you used Kurt Angle in the Impact game, it was just like he had a punch and a kick and like a suplex and the angle slam or whatever. And that was like literally all he could do, because it was just like they had licensed all these wrestling moves or something. And I was like, that can't, how is that a thing? And so he was saying he's interested to see what these guys are doing, because like obviously Retrosoft, it seems like a pretty basic kind of video game, but I'm interested in what Virtual Basement's doing too, because if that's the case, that's kind of BS. Like you can't license the wrestling moves.
They, I think the Xbox and the PlayStation, those are the systems we have. I'm not a gamer. My daughters play, and my wife plays a little bit. I do play. I play the show. That's the only thing I play. I don't know if you can see that. I'm not endorsing the show. I play baseball, and I'm not that good at it. But I have been really stoked about this Retromania. I think that's something I can get into, because I grew up on the Atari 2600, so one button, one joystick, and the retro looks like it might jibe with me. You know what I mean? So, but it wouldn't surprise me if WWE had licensed moves in an effort to monopolize that as well.
For those who don't know, the Atari 2600 came out in 1957 when Rob was like 17, I believe.
My first president was the first Roosevelt.
Yeah. I feel like that's accurate historical information based on the year I just said, which is already just blowing my mind. So congratulations, Rob.
Well, speaking of Zicky Dice,
let's speak of the outlandish one.
Well, speaking of him and Eli Drake, I just thought this was fun. A little exchange between Eli Drake and Zicky Dice on social media, where Eli actually said that his favorite part of Carneyland this week was Zicky Dice, and Zicky Dice replied back, kind of a little bromantic, that he was, it melted his heart that he got that shout out from Eli. So, who knows? Could be a little collaboration between the two of them. I don't know where that would go, but it was cool to see them interacting and kind of supporting each other on Twitter. So I thought that was interesting.
It's funny, I didn't see any tweet like that from Nick Aldis. Okay.
Didn't you?
You hush it. You hush it.
Oh, moving on. Do you guys watch do y'all watch Being the Elite YouTube series? We've talked a lot about AEW, but
is that produced by NWA?
It is not.
No.
So it's not. Okay. Well, Being the Elite this week, at the end, we saw the return of a former member of the Elite in Marty Scurll, who is tied to NWA.
Good one.
Through Ring of Honor. But it was really funny. So go watch it if you get a chance. But basically at the end of the episode, the Young Bucks and Hangman Page are all kind of in a huddle, and they're talking about how we just got to get our mojo back. We gotta so it's like something's missing, and I think one of them says, if somebody could just walk through that door and just something or someone and just tell us like what's missing. Well, then a guy walks in with a face mask on, pulls it off. It's Marty Scurll. They totally ignore him. It's a total comedy bit, but they're just like, they think he's the room service guy. Tell him to leave the steak over by the bed or whatever. And he's just like, guys, I'm back. And then he just leaves. So that was that. So I don't know if that's going anywhere. I don't know if my thought was maybe Ring of Honor, since they're not doing any shows, maybe they're gonna let him appear on Dynamite or something. I don't know, but I just thought that was interesting that he had kind of reemerged on being the Elite.
I have no problem with being the Elite, for the record. I have not seen it. I mean, I've seen prior episodes, but I did read that news about Marty Scurll, and it made me wonder kind of the same things. Like, who knows, man? Maybe that's building those bridges. Obviously, there's that connection, like you said, with the Elite and, Ring of Honor, and then now NWA and Ring of Honor. Apparently, New Japan reconsidered a lot of stuff about Ring of Honor. Like I had heard the rumors or seen them in various places, like the Observer, that they were kind of done with Ring of Honor. But when they saw they re-signed Marty and some of the signings they had done and had put Marty in such a prominent position, they kind of reconsidered everything and were kind of fine with Ring of Honor again. So they apparently like Marty Scurll. So maybe he's the guy that's going to make all of it come together.
Well, and along the same lines, I don't know if you guys saw this in the NWA Fam Discord today, but RJ Krasinski had tweeted at Cody. I think he was doing kind of a Q&A about the title or something, but he asked him, he said, is the open challenge, because Cody's announced that he's going to do a weekly open challenge, kind of like John Cena used to do with the U.S. title for the TNT Championship. And he said, is it open to non-AEW talent? And Cody retweeted it and just said yes. So, I don't know what that's hinting at, or if he's just kind of stirring the pot there, but I don't know. I feel like with everything going on, and as you mentioned a lot, Rob, AEW is kind of like a first cousin, and I think they do want to support indie wrestling, and not just indie wrestling, but other promotions that, are not WWE as direct competitors, and kind of spotlighting those people. So I would not be shocked if AEW pulled in a Marty Scurll for a TNT title match. That would be interesting, or something like that, where they're just able to kind of on a per appearance basis kind of pull these people in, and maybe even some other people from AEW. Maybe we even, they were talking in the Discord about, getting Aldis and Cody again. It wouldn't be for the world's title. If it was the TNT title, it wouldn't be as prestigious, but we know those two can put on, a hell of a match. So, the chance of seeing Aldis, possibly on TNT and representing the NWA would be a really cool thing, and something that, as much as AEW does, I think, try to be, the alternative akin to WWE in sports entertainment, I wouldn't put it past them to be generous enough to offer a spotlight to guys like that could use it.
Yeah, they're certainly going to be less anal about it, I think.
I've always felt like there's like that, like I just said, like that obvious like fabric that's weaved in there between all of them. And like Rob said, the first cousin there. I mean, it feels like that's definitely the case. It feels like it's just a matter of communication, like just something in there. The right person has to talk to the right person. I really don't think it's the talent that has the problem. Like, I think it's just ownership has to get on the same page as far as, Ring of Honor and Corgan and Tony Khan and those guys. I imagine that's the main part. Nick has been adamant every time I've talked to him about, like literally the first interview I did for the show was with Nick Aldis. And I remember saying like, it sucks, like that we should get Marty Scurll and Nick Aldis 2, Cody Aldis 3. And it does kind of stink that those aren't going to happen. And he was like, yet, Gary, yet. Like they're not going to happen yet. He was like, I have high hopes that all of those things will happen.
Look at the AEW roster, man. The AEW roster is full of disaffected, disenchanted WWE stars and NWA migrant stars. And you look at them all, Bunny, Penelope Ford, they were both participants in NWA 70 or the Crockett Cup. You look at Cody, that you can make an argument that the AEW title sprung out of the NWA, this is, to me, it's not a matter of if but when. I think it's inevitable. And again, I don't think that there's this this paranoia that surrounds the AEW. It's just a matter, like you said, Gary, of let's get the power brokers together. Let's come to a deal. Let's protect the titles of both organizations and make sure that nobody, is buried and that kind of thing. And but I'm sure that I think it will happen. I think that it's inevitable that we'll see all this Cody 3 because, gosh, man, I mean that series has been one of the perennial World Championship series of my lifetime, and I've been along for a long, long time, man, since like the first Roosevelt presidency. You know what I mean? So
that's I love that callback. That is why I still believe that there's a good chance that it happens. I feel like the guys in the elite, besides their friendship with Marty Scurll, I feel like a guy like Cody recognizes that there's that connection to their launching pad was All In, and a big part of that All In was their relationship with the NWA and William Patrick Corgan, and that Cody and Aldis feud was as much of a main event as anything else they had. So I would say pretty close to it was the most important match on the card. So hopefully they get to get back together again, because they've got good chemistry, those two guys. Anyway,
unless I'm missing something, like when I think about it, I'm like, there is ways that everyone wins. Like AEW and NWA are not competitors. NWA comes on Tuesday nights. AEW's on Wednesday nights. They don't run pay-per-views at the same time. They don't, there's cross promotion between NWA, Ring of Honor, AEW, throwing them in the mix because they do have a big platform. I mean, the only thing I could see could be money considerations or, just the idea that if AEW gives an NWA performer a spotlight, that's somebody on their roster that's missing a spot in a pay-per-view or on a card. But it helps wrestling as a whole to cross promote like that, because I had lost interest in Ring of Honor until Marty Scurll showed up, and then Nick Aldis showed up over there. Like, that kind of got me back into wondering about Ring of Honor and wanting to watch that. And I'm sure there's Ring of Honor fans that now were wanting to tune into NWA. Like, I didn't want to tune into one at the expense of the other. It was in addition to. So it just grows the wrestling fandom as a whole. And I think Tony Khan, from what I've heard about him, he's a wrestling fan. That's why he wanted to run AEW, because he's a wrestling fan, and he's very active on social media with the fan community, very aware of everything that's going on. So I feel like obviously between him and the McMahon empire, he's going to be far more open to including some of those non-contracted talents onto his show and giving them a stage. So I would love to see that. I hope it happens.
Just like dwelling.
Good night,
in the
everyone.
Silence. Just like dwelling in the silence.
Thank you for tuning in.
All right, guys. Well, we've dragged this thing out for a pretty long time. I think we've covered a lot of stuff. If you're done with the news, we can head into our next segment, which we like to call "Putting Them Over and Burying Them" or something. I don't know what we decided to call it. Really, I just went into it with so much enthusiasm. I honestly, I just like popping Will over there, like when he gets all giddy. So, anyway, what do you guys? And also, I like making him laugh, but then I hate how disappointed he looks at me sometimes. So.
I'm only disappointed when after everything I say, you guys just sit and stare at me.
That's happened to me multiple times, so I don't want to hear it.
Okay.
I feel like I've said something, and there's a delay for sure, but then I'm just like, is anybody else going to say anything? Do I need to move on? I don't know.
I'm like checking my internet connection. I'm like, did it freeze up? No, they're blinking.
One other piece of news we forgot to cover, man, and that is that the Bearded Trio got slinked this week.
Oh, yeah.
That is true. That did happen. My wife, super proud of it. She just, I already had one, obviously, but she wanted,
Obviously, yeah.
no, well, anyway,
Whatever.
she wanted a Robert Stinson and Will Martin slink because she wants them on a coffee mug.
Same.
What's the word? Toot haste, or what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. There's a word for it.
No one knows what you're talking about.
Two paster.
Du hast.
Cut 'em off.
Is that it? Du hast.
Ah, yes, Rammstein. Ah, yes.
The great philosopher Rammstein.
Du hast mich.
Yes. Anyway, she wants it on a coffee mug. That's her main concern. She keeps saying that over and over again. So we need merch, and we need a coffee mug that the Slate Bearded Trio could be on.
Hey, this is a great time for, if you're still listening to this episode, even after the painful, awkward silences after everything I said in this
Well,
episode.
if I do my job editing, they won't exist. So
well, exactly.
you'll just sound like an asshole.
But if you're still listening, send us some ideas and let us know if you would actually buy merch, because we're tossing around the idea of, coffee mugs, stickers, T-shirts, cell phone covers,
Gravy pastries.
Gravy cake, recipe books. I don't know.
It really sounded like you said gravy pastries for a second, and that kind of turned me off.
I didn't want to like tip the hand to gravy cake. We were keeping that secret.
Nothing's a secret here. We're all family.
No secrets here. Look at that. Wow, my hair. It's just real flat.
Anyways, but yes, send us, let us know, if that's something that you would be interested in obtaining, so we can make sure that those become a reality.
I told my wife we were going early today because we just get done in like an hour.
Nope.
Not happening. All right, so who wants to go first on putting them over? I'll go first. I'll do that because I got quick ones. I'm going to put over today J. Cal's interview with David Marquez on the Alliance blog. That's mine. J. Cal sits down with David Marquez in what is like an hour and a half of conversation with David Marquez, and it made my life a whole lot easier if I ever get to interview David Marquez, because I just get to start from now and figure it out, because they cover everything that dude has ever done. And in a way, to his credit again, that I would have never been able to do. Like, J. Cal knows names and places and times and all of this historical data that I just would not have, and it would take so much research to get. J. Cal's very familiar with that period of NWA history, and it's cool to see him break down some stuff, and he gets some really cool stories out of David Marquez, like just old school NWA stuff. And even back to like stuff with Harley Race and Gordon Soley and all of that stuff. David Marquez has worked with all of them, and it's very interesting. And then to his credit also, by the way, the United Wrestling Network just announced they're starting to put out some new content. Like, they just launched on their YouTube channel, like you can watch. Weirdly, the first week of This Is the NWA Weekly, we talked about the Alliance blog and how far they went back, and we found that press release from Perth, Australia, and that match, or that card, and we ran it down, like what was happening in the NWA at that time. And United Wrestling Network, headed up by David Marquez, just released that YouTube video of that match between Daniel Bryan and X-Pac. It's the main event of that Perth, Australia NWA show. So that's kind of awesome, I thought. I don't think we had anything to do with that, but I'll be happy that we take credit for it. Anyway, so that David Marquez interview is really, really good. Jason Cayley does it. Does us proud. Sorry, I don't know why I'm having such a hard time here at this last part of it. Good job, J. Cal. You're amazing, and I love that interview, and it makes me not feel like I have to ever dig anywhere that deep into the history of David Marquez, because from now on I can just be like, if you want to know everything about this dude's history in wrestling, go watch this one, because he gets it all. I don't think they missed a step. Burying him, I'm going to bury whatever son of a gun kept pestering Marty Bell that she finally had to respond and say, like, will you please stop messaging me? And then she had to feel bad because the person wouldn't stop messaging her, and then she had to block them. That story bummed me out because Marty Bell is like the nicest freaking person on the planet. And what kind of asshole does that? Y'all leave all of them alone. But in particular, for me right now, stop messing with Marty Bell. Marty Bell is like the sweetest person. Like, what the hell is wrong with you if you're harassing that woman? You are such an asshole. Stop it. Be better. All right, I'm done. Now you see. You see.
That's how it feels.
Go ahead.
That's how it feels. I was gonna say Rob needs to go because as soon as I'm done, you guys will just stop talking. So go ahead, Rob.
Okay. Well, I've got a Barry, but I've got a couple of putovers, and I don't want to do more than one, but I feel like I need to because it's timely. First of all, I want to put over our friends over at 10 Pounds of Podcast, Elder Sour, who made
Son of a bitch, I meant to mention this. Good one. Sorry.
That's why I'm doing it now. Elder Sour is now taking a visible role over at one of our sister channels, and you guys can correct me or not, but I think he's doing a daily this day in NWA history. Elder Sour is a great guy. Adam Martello, those guys are doing some fantastic work, and so I want to put that channel over. Go watch them, support everybody in the NWA family. I want to put over Eli Drake's girlfriend Michelle, who I was really pulling for Eli Drake. I don't often pull for him, but I was really pulling for him in that segment on the Eli Drake show, and he came through. And then
wait, Rob, I have to ask you this before you go on there, because I meant to bring this up earlier when we were talking about the Eli Drake show, but I wondered your thoughts on that segment because I was watching it. I legitimately thought that whole segment was pretty hilarious. I actually enjoyed it, and not for the reasons you're bringing up now because I'm a gentleman, but because I just thought the segment was funny with like the voiceovers and stuff like that. So you were cool with that segment because it was a little naughty.
I decided that with what the NWA is doing, they're not beholden to me, and there's just going to be certain. I want everything that the NWA puts out to be palatable for my whole family. It's not going to be. I have to accept that. And so if I look at the Eli Drake show as like what we do, NWA After Dark. I can enjoy that. I'm just going to give props to Eli Drake, man. He's got a hot girlfriend. So it is what it is, man. I'm proud of my girl. I'm proud of my wife. He should be proud of his girlfriend. So we've all got beautiful wives, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. So that makes sense.
Yep, I'm with you, buddy. I just like how wiggly you got in the chair while you were explaining it.
Yeah, I was like, you got me in a logical bind here. Last thing I want to put over is our friend Brian Solomon, a major ally of the National Wrestling Alliance, of the legitimacy of the world's title reign, and a contributor to Pro Wrestling Illustrated, a friend of This Is the NWA Podcast. Brian Solomon made the cover of Pro Wrestling Illustrated, this is the August 2020 issue that's fresh on the newsstands now.
He looks good in his underwear.
Yeah. This article on WrestleMania, the real winners and losers, is authored by Brian Solomon. So I want to point you that way and put him up for big hats off and congratulations for making the cover story of PWI. And I have two berries. I also want to bury PWI because if you look back in the official top 10 rankings, Nick Aldis inexplicably has dropped to number 10. He was at one point number 8, but he's dropped to number 10. Not only do we have Jacob Fatu rated above him, we have Tessa Blanchard rated above him. We have Jake Hager, who Nick Aldis defeated during the Aldis Crusade. We have Roosh, who tagged with Nick Aldis as the junior partner. And we have Adam Cole, who's an NXT guy, all rated above Nick Aldis. So I want to bury PWI for that. You got to get your ratings in order, guys.
I have a big problem with Jake Hager being above him.
Exactly, man. And you know what?
No disrespect to Jake Hager, except that, at least Adam Cole, Roosh, and, those guys are, champions in their brands. But Like Jake Hager, why?
And again, the only encounter he's ever had with Nick Aldis has a clean pinfall victory over him. So it's inexplicable to me.
We're about to have another NWA versus PWI episode.
I know, man. We need to. The women's top 10, Thunder Rosa's not even mentioned in there. Not even mentioned. You've got people who are from independent promotions. You've got Kaylee Ray, Sasha Banks, who you can't tell me in a million years that Sasha Banks can hold a candle to Thunder Rosa. No. All rated up there. Thunder Rosa not even mentioned. So I'm both putting over and burying PWI. And then I want to bury the 57 people, the 57 assholes who put thumbs down on the Girl Power episode of this week on Friday. 57 people had the audacity to thumbs down that very important episode. Go take a long walk on a short pier, man, if you did that.
You can follow my Twitter to see how I feel about people that thumbs down it. I have made it very clear what they can do with themselves. But, yeah, I can't believe it got up to 57. That kind of bums me out. Like, what in the hell? Why would you thumbs down that video? Like, literally what reason would there be to thumbs down that video? Except you being a dick. Sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway. Will staying silent, so I assume it was because he did.
Well, you guys have got it covered. You're saying it all.
Okay.
Well, I will put over Eli Drake for mentioning wrestling this week. As much as he did, I thought that was probably the highlight of my week. Next to the two pieces of NWA content I'll put over is that, and then just Eddie Kingston as a whole. I just really enjoy listening to him speak. I think I said it in a previous episode, but anytime he speaks, like I didn't know going into that interview if we were going to get which version of Eddie Kingston, and now I know that there's only one version, and that makes me really happy. And so now, even more than before, I can listen to him speak whenever, because he is himself, and I love that. And so he's just so compelling, so entertaining. And so between him and then just and with Eli Drake, it was more just about, it got me thinking about wrestling and in an analytical way, which I love to do. So that really helped. And then I'm just going to bury myself for not putting out the Daily Show this week.
That's not fair.
And I'll bury myself in hopes that it will inspire me to do better content this week.
Listen, I can tell you straight up front, as the founding member of This Is The NWA, that we are now all part of. This place ain't like that, man. You can only, when I was struggling early on, I'll just go ahead and put it out there, and I'll have to go back and look for the exact same quote. But a great wise man once told me, and his name was David Lagana, because I just messaged him and I was talking to him about, like, God, my work's been so busy. And he legitimately was like, dude, you can only do what you can from where you are at the time it is, or something like that. It was like, basically, he was just like, you gotta do what you gotta do. And David Lagana is paid to work on his stuff 24/7. So, none of us are making a ton of money to just do this thing. So we're not going to beat anybody up. You do what you can. And I'll give you shit about it. I mean, I will do that. But
well, I appreciate that. I just wanted to make it known that it wasn't because I didn't want to. Just to make that clear, the highlight of every day for me is being able to put out something to inform and maybe make people laugh. And so I missed it more than anyone else. So it's definitely on my list of things to get back onto this week. But yeah, that's other than that, I mean, there wasn't really a lot. There's plenty of negativity in the real world, quote unquote, to bury. But in the world of wrestling, I just generally tried to focus on the positive this week. So not to make you guys feel bad for burying stuff, but
the dickhead.
I'm gonna bury the silence that I
Man, he gonna do that. he gonna do that, and this was his idea. Hey,
I was about to say, what response did you want us to have right there? Like, what did you think was going to happen?
I don't know, man. Something.
Like, before we went live, he was like, "Hey, man, let's do a segment where we bully somebody every week. We're gonna bury somebody."
Trap.
It's got to be a person. It's got to be somebody who's going to hear it. We got to just totally destroy them. Oh, man. All right. Well, unless you guys have something else, I think that's it for this week's episode of This Is The NWA Weekly. Hopefully, if you've heard this, you've already subscribed to the show. That helps us get in front of more people, not just you because you see it again, but because YouTube says, oh, hey, people actually like this. They're subscribing to it. So you should do that. You should hit the bell that alerts you whenever new stuff comes out, because we always put out new stuff. And, follow us online. I am at This Is Gary Horn. Will, where are you at?
At Hey It's Will with 1 L.
Okay. Rob.
I am at R Stinson 4, the number 4, as in this right here.
Okay, perfect. And the podcast is at the NWA Pod on all of the social medias. Wherever you look, we are there. We're following you. I promise. Every breath you take and every move you make, all that stuff. So until next week, thank you so much for listening and watching all this stuff.